Hello and welcome to Workplace Makers with Nina Fountain. This is the podcast that gets to know the people creating workplaces we aspire to. It's about achieving the ultimate win, a workplace people are drawn to wherever they work from, and discovering how we can remove limitations to enable people to be their best through workplace innovation and design. I'm your host, modern workplace consultant Nina Fountain. Join me as I unlock the secrets of attractive, productive, and engaging modern workplaces. Today, I'm talking with Nathan McLean, who has extensive experience in facilities, property, and workplace experience. And most recently, he led and developed a world-class workplace experience team that supported Xero as it grew from a few hundred people in a handful of offices to over 4,000 across 8 countries. Nathan has a wealth of knowledge about real estate, property management, facilities management, office services, health and safety, physical security, environmental management, travel management. There's a lot in that bucket of things that he is capable of. So Nathan, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Excellent, and thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to our chat today.
Xero with an X is a New Zealand-based technology company that provides cloud-based accounting software for small and medium businesses, and is now a $1 billion company, both in terms of revenue and equity. And you were part of that growth, as I mentioned, from just a handful of offices across to Australia, the UK, the US. So what was it like for you seeing this innovative and this iconic Kiwi brand take that journey from a few hundred people to a few thousand and being part of it? What was that like for you?
It was an amazing journey. Once in a lifetime. I don't think I'll ever experience that again. To come on board when they were really just starting to take off, particularly globally and from a property and staffing footprint perspective, was really exciting. There was a huge amount to do. When I joined, they didn't have a facilities team. It was me, and I inherited 2 reception staff members from the HR team. And they were already trying to build new offices around the world. So to sort of borrow a phrase from the founder, Rod Drury, it was a bit like trying to fly a plane whilst you're building the engines at the same time. But incredibly exciting, and I learned a huge amount during my time there.
It sounds amazing. And so in that role that you had there, workplace experience was key to that. And it's actually relatively new to the field of workplace and facilities management, but it wasn't new to you. You've been delivering workplace experience for years now. So what is workplace experience? So
for me, it's quite a holistic term, and as the name suggests, it's about the experience that people have when they come in to the workplace. It's not just about the physical. And whilst the term's relatively new, for me, having a very people-focused facilities management view has been around since I first sort of got involved with facilities management. My first manager at the time had this belief and mantra that he constantly reiterated to us, that customer perception is reality. And it was his way of saying that it doesn't matter that the air conditioning works perfectly well and within the specifications of the air conditioning system. What matters is how are our staff members experiencing that air conditioning system. We need to listen to them and understand how it's impacting them, and what can we do to make their interaction with that system, that process, and with us better, because ultimately they will measure our performance based on the interaction with us, not necessarily on the technical capability or performance of a piece of machinery. So that's where I sort of started my journey towards workplace experience. And then over the years, I've found that there are 3 sort of spheres that interlink with each other that really make up a great workplace experience. And yes, it's the physical space that facilities management people look after, but it's also the technology, which your IT teams look after, and it's also your people processes and your culture, which often your HR team is sort of responsible for. And we can get a little bit focused and stay in our own little swim lanes. But quite often what people experience is some of the greyness in between those swim lanes. And I've found that a facilities team is a good place to try and pull together those 3 areas to really focus on, well, how are our people experiencing the services that we all deliver, because quite often facilities people on a daily basis are interacting with staff members and are hearing their gripes, their issues, whether it's about space or technology or onboarding. We hear it all, so we're a good place to start feeding that back out to those other teams. And in an ideal world, we would work much more closely together to provide a great workplace experience, a great employee experience for the people that we're all serving.
Fantastic. And what was it that was important to Xero about workplace experience? Because it is quite a different approach, as you're outlining. Why did they give you a mandate to take this approach? It's very customer centric.
It sort of just evolved. When I arrived, I was already focused on the people and the experience that they had within our offices. But the opportunity that Xero provided was unique in that one of their values was human. This real focus on being humans, treating people like humans, valuing our people. So where in the past it would be hard to justify under a finance hat doing various things that benefit our people because it's hard to create a return on investment, Xero just innately got that investing in things that made life easier, more enjoyable for our people when they're at work and in our spaces was just better for the business. Happier staff, they built stronger cultures, they stayed longer. So it just worked.
What got you interested in it? You said you came to Xero with a focus already of looking at people and having that awareness that people were central to the workplace.
I would say naturally I like to help people. I like to make people's life easier. When I first got into facilities management, as I mentioned before, my manager at the time had this focus on customer perception as reality, and that just resonated with me. Not only do we have to do the technical stuff well, but we need to interact with people well and deliver a great service to them. And then when I moved on from that company, it was based in the UK, and I came back to New Zealand with my now wife. I landed at a facilities management or real estate management job at a large international company. And whilst my philosophy of putting people first created a great result and a great team, I felt very hamstrung by the fact that this big, very large organisation doesn't really put people at the centre of stuff, and there was this real focus on just reducing cost regardless of the impact, creating process and bureaucracy regardless of the impact on the people that are trying to work within it. And that really solidified in my mind that that's not the type of organisation that's really going to get the best out of their employees. So when this opportunity at Xero came up, not only did I like the look of the values in the business, the sheer newness of it excited me about, I could create something that's quite different. I didn't go in there going, right, we're going to do workplace experience. I didn't even have that name, have heard of that name. But my focus was, let's go in and focus on delivering great stuff for our people so that they could do the best work of their lives when they come to work each day.
And that is really key, isn't it, to the point, is that the workplace has a quite powerful tool or lever. It has a significant impact on people's productivity and their working week. And so what is it about this physical space, do you think, that makes it so powerful as a lever for people's productivity, their engagement, even their well-being?
I think it's the human interaction. It's not the space itself per se, but the space can facilitate and help people to have more meaningful, more enjoyable human interactions, whether they're planned in a meeting room, face-to-face, or with some hybrid these days going on, whether it's the unplanned, it's sitting down and having coffee with someone. It's that human interaction piece. And I think that's incredibly important in a post-pandemic world where most organisations who are office-based are working in a hybrid manner. The value of those human interactions, it just increases more because you're having less of them. So you want to make the most of those interactions when you come into the office. You want space to facilitate that, as well as facilitate those people that come into the office and do just want to do focus work. because that's what they need to do that day.
Yeah.
So there's such a variety that you need to provide in the modern workplace for people.
You're now working as a consultant to help employers who want to take this journey or want their workplace to be a place people are drawn to. And so what are you seeing employers doing in this area of workplace experience? How are you seeing them adapting or adjusting to the hybrid workplace model?
There's a few different things going on. A lot of people are taking the opportunity to consolidate their space. It makes sense. You only have half your office coming in, you don't need all of that space. So then that's a great opportunity to sort of reinvent your space to better serve your staff when they are coming in. One of the things I come across a fair bit is that there's this mindset of let's create a new space that will encourage people into the office. And when you take them through a journey to understand, well, what do people want, when do they come in, why do they come in, having a better coffee machine's not going to make someone come into the office more. It certainly makes their life more enjoyable whilst they're there. So we often land on the fact that you're not necessarily going to create this beacon that all of a sudden people are going to come swarming into. So let's change the mindset to, well, of the space that we do create, how do we best support what people are coming in for and to do, and how do we make that experience a great one? Little or less friction than there currently is, easier to interact with people, the different work settings they may require. I mentioned before, some people come in and they need focus, other ones they want collaboration, like cafe style, we want phone booths. That great variety of space is required. So you're not necessarily creating a space that encourages people to come in, but you're removing the barriers as to why I shouldn't come in. So when they roll out of bed, they're not dreading, I've got to go to the office for this meeting today. It's like, I'm actually quite excited to go in, a change of scenery, and I'm excited for the stuff that I will do whilst I'm there.
That's a great way of looking at it, reducing the friction, so there's no reason not to leave the house and get into the office. Yeah,
and I think technology plays a big part in that, and some of the technology, workplace technology, has really evolved over the last few years, whether it's desk booking systems or space utilization systems. A lot of it came about as a way of measuring what space is being used, often with the view as to let's reduce space. But I think the way it needs to be used now is, how's the space being used? Where are some of the friction points? What's not being used? How do we change that up? So instead of a set and forget office space, you need to be constantly looking at how it's performing, how it's being used and being interacted with, so that you can change it, because your people are going to change, the way they work is going to change, your management structures are changing, everything's changing. So the workplace needs to be flexible as well, and some of these technology solutions really help you to stay on top of your game in that respect and remove some of the frictions. If you're going down to unassigned desking, one of the big friction points is, if I get out of bed and bother to come into the office, is there going to be a desk? A desk booking system, it helps resolve that anxiety. I know there's going to be a desk, and I know where it's going to be, and I can see on the platform that, Jim and Joe, they're going to be there too. Oh, great, I'll go and sit next to them. So it helps to remove some of those barriers that people think about when thinking about not coming in. Because when you're faced with a commute, it probably doesn't take too much to go, I'll stay at home.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw that recently with a client. There was a direct correlation between how far away they were and whether they were likely to come in more. When they were closer, they were much more likely to be in the office more frequently. And it was almost a straight line, that graph. So you could see really clearly the impact of distance. Throughout our conversation, we're talking about customer-centric. We're talking about people being at the heart of the organisation's approach when they want to make it easy for people, make it smooth, make it a productive, satisfying experience in the office. And what I'm would love to dig into a little bit here is, how is this a challenge to the facilities management profession? Now, do you feel, what are the new capabilities or the new mindsets that are being asked of people in facilities management? And yeah, maybe that's very well aligned, or do you see there's a challenge there?
It is. I think you need to be much more people centric. So you do need to think more about your customers. What are they experiencing when they're coming into the office? It's not just a case of, right, there's an office, there's the door, there's a desk. It's that interaction. So instead of having a reception, do you have a concierge service? I'm seeing some companies, as I say, in their IT team, they'll have an IT help desk, like a physical kiosk in the office, because you don't want to come into the office with an IT issue and, oh, I'm just going to log a ticket. Well, I could have stayed home and logged a ticket. It's that people interaction. You want to go and talk to someone. Same with HR, same with facilities management or travel or finance. You want to come and meet those individuals. So from a facilities management perspective, you definitely want to be much more focused on the people. You need to have an affinity for people, like interacting with people. Just sitting behind your desk or in a little facilities room somewhere, looking at your BMS going, yep, computer says everything's good, it is not necessarily the way of the future. Whilst that stuff's still very, very important, I don't think it's the way we're going to lead people to be continuing to return to the office and getting the most out of the office experience that they can.
Amazing. And then, so what do workplace experience managers need from their employers in order to do this role well? Now that there is a shift, there's a new way of looking at the role. How can employers help their facilities management teams to make this journey?
I think they need to be people focused, like truly people centric, because as I mentioned before, it's not always a simple financial return on investment calculation for some of the stuff that you need to do. It's not a simple case of, half the people coming in, half the floor, half the cost. It's probably half the people, half the floor. We only save a quarter of the cost because we need to invest some stuff back in to make that space really, really work. Simply going, well, you don't have as many people on site, so you can lose heads out of your facilities budget because you're not supporting as many people. You're not going to get that people interaction that you really need, and that the space will start to feel cold. It'll almost become like a co-working space, but without that community aspect that people actually go to co-working spaces for, because there's nobody curating that. And if nobody's curating it, whether it's your workplace experience team and combination with your HR team and your IT teams, if you're not curating that, then it's just a place where people will come in. It's a facility they'll use, but in essence they're still operating in a very hybrid way. It just becomes a co-working space. So I think they do need to be people centric. Resources, obviously you need the resources to be able to deliver what you need to deliver.
Yeah, and so you've mentioned some there around the technology with booking systems and understanding what's being utilized, and some sense making tools there, for which could be literally sensors around
Yep.
where people are and where they're not. And then it sounds like key to that is having enough people on staff to be able to have the conversations, to potentially be behind a desk or in an area where people could come and talk about what's working and what's not, and potentially having those richer conversations where you get the detail that you don't always get from technology.
Absolutely, because the technology, the sensors, they can give you the quantitative data, but the qualitative data that you need, that only comes from, as you say, being there, observing, talking to people. And if you're not employing people because you think, well, we don't need it in the modern age, people just randomly come and go, it's a bit like a hotel, then you're not going to get the qualitative data.
Coming and going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in my belief, that has a negative impact on the organisation's overall culture.
And so, what do you think is the biggest hurdle, I guess, in creating this customer focused workplace for people? If you've got, imagine a facilities manager who says, yes, let's take more of a workplace experience approach. Let's be customer focused, and we can see the potential this could make for the organization. And there is that almost an identity element there around being people focused. It's quite core to a business. You either, you feel like they're either people focused or they're not. So maybe that's the biggest hurdle. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you think is the biggest hurdle to just getting this off the ground?
I think that if you're a customer service focused individual or leader of a facilities or workplace team, you'll find a way to improve customer service. Yes, to really make it great, you definitely need the support of the organisation for sure. But even without it, there are ways in which you can improve that service. I think one of the biggest hurdles that people have in a post-pandemic world, and with all the hybrid working going on, is that you need multiple mediums for delivering great customer service. It's not just let's deliver a service to those people in the office, because that's what we're talking about, and that is important. But the definition of workplace is expanded. It's now expanded to people's home. So how far do you go into supporting them whilst they're at home? Some of that stuff is mandated in legislation, such as health and safety. There's stuff that you need to do. Different companies will take different views as to how much support we'll provide. Some will provide money or stipends for setting up good workstation setups at home. Others will take the view of, well, there's a perfectly adequate desk in an office. If you choose to work at home, then you choose to work with what you've got. But I think the greater challenge is when you're communicating and interacting with people, you can't just communicate and interact with the people physically in the office. So how do you leverage things like your internal intranets, or if you're using Teams or Slack or whatever other communication device, how do you get information out to people about what's going on from a workplace perspective? And that might relate specifically to the office. It might relate to any number of other remits that you sort of have within your area, from health and safety to travel to facility. Seems to be a dumping ground for pretty much anything that nobody else wants, so it could be quite broad. So I do think that the multiple mediums in which you need to deliver great customer service is probably one of the biggest hurdles to grapple with as we move forward.
Because there's more of a need to connect with some of the organisations' communication channels and messages down through senior leadership, some of the change functions that are happening in organisations. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. That change piece is really important, and the communication piece, and having a bit more of a strategy and a plan about how you can do that and do it effectively. There is a fine balance between getting enough communication and too much communication, getting the right channels through. Some people love Slack and just want to be bombarded with everything through Slack, and others find the bombardment to be too noisy. So just getting the right channels for your organisation, for your customers, is important.
What about in your journey, Nathan? Have you had any books or resources or people that you followed who have inspired you with this customer-centric approach to the workplace and or shaped your view?
The people that have shaped my view have been the people that I've worked with. So former managers, either showing me how great customer service is important, or showing me how not to do it.
You learn both ways, right?
Yeah, you certainly do. The other pieces, the people I've worked with, particularly at Xero, people within my team, outside of my team, just continually challenged and inspired me to create a great workplace experience, to constantly be thinking about how could we be improving upon this, reducing the friction, making it easier for people. So yeah, no great holy grail of book or way to do it. When I think about more formal things such as books, I had help along the way when it comes to personal leadership. Probably the two I'm most partial to would be Patrick Cioni and Brene Brown from a leadership perspective. The writings.
Book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, is that the one you're thinking of?
That's one of them. For Patrick, I always recommend to people in my team that are wanting to develop and become managers and then ultimately become leaders, because I think there's quite a difference between managing and leading, that they should read Patrick's book, The Motive.
Oh, the new one. Great.
It's all about, should I be a leader? Is that really my happy place? Is that what I want? And of all of his books, I think, it's probably one of the later ones that he's written. It's probably the first one you should read, and I just like the way in which he crafts the story around that and makes you think about, actually, is leadership my happy place? Is that where I would be best placed? Because quite often we can just start thinking about, well, if I need to progress, I need to become a manager and then a senior manager, and people think senior manager is leader. Actually, leadership is quite different to management, and as leadership a path I want to go down. So from a personal development perspective, those two authors would be my top two picks.
And so many books on the list from Brené Brown, aren't there? That almost any one of them is worth picking up and having a read of.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Now, Nathan, I didn't prep you that I was going to ask you this question, but just to get to know you a little bit more before we finish up, are there any meals that you really enjoy either cooking or eating? What is your favourite meal?
I like a good fish meal. Not
Awesome.
so much cooking, because my wife doesn't like fish, so I never cook it. But when I go out to a restaurant, quite often I'll have whatever fish is on the menu, because I enjoy that.
Nice. A nice change of scene, eh?
Yep, absolutely.
Brilliant. And I always feel like with fish, you're kind of on a holiday somewhere, because you're close to the sea. Somehow there's this association with holidays. Yep. For me. And then, do you have any final words before we finish up, as people think about workplace experience, as leaders listening, consider whether this is, would they really have consolidated a workplace experience approach, and what that could mean for them? Any final words on the topic?
I think it's important to understand your people. What do they want? What do they need? How are you going to best support them? Understand your organisation's approach to the future of their workforce strategy. Hybrid is something that is just eventuated for a lot of people because of the pandemic, and if organisations don't have clarity about what their version of hybrid is, it can be quite challenging to create spaces that best support that. But it can also be quite challenging for the individual staff members to understand, well, what is right? When should I be in the office? When shouldn't I be in the office? How do we get some of that critical mass of people in the office that really makes that human connection worthwhile, without actually mandating everybody comes back to the office, which nobody wants. So at two ends of the spectrum, we don't want to mandate people, but we do want people to come in to create that human interaction. And I think facilities workplace management specialists have a place to play in that, not only in delivering the space, but also trying to drive the business for clarity as to where do we sit, how are we going to address this. Some have just absolute freedom of choice on an individual basis. Some it's a little bit more team orientated. Others are a bit more mandated. We're all coming in on a Tuesday and a Thursday, but you can do what you want on a Wednesday, Friday, Monday. But yeah, it's an important piece to unlock. It's a hard thing to unlock, but it's an important piece to unlock.
Thanks, Nathan. Great to have you on the show, and really appreciate you being here with us today.
That's great. Thank you for having me.